The 15-inch MacBook Air doesn't seem like a huge change from its smaller sibling, but that extra screen size actually makes all the difference in the world, and you should totally buy one. I haven't actually made a you should buy video on a current gen piece of Apple technology in a minute now. I think the last one was the AirPods Pro 2, or maybe the Apple Watch Ultra. After the absolute revolution of the M1 processor, everything else is fine. They haven't made anything bad, but it's not really worth buying new. However, there is enough here that I can, without reservation, make a dedicated video for all the great reasons that you should go out and get one. First off, to baseline us here, I do think the cheapest model is the one to get. If you need a little more memory or a little more storage, well then you're starting to talk a different kind of computer, and you would probably be better served by just going with a MacBook Pro 14. This specifically cheapest model comes in at $1299. Spec-wise, it has a 256GB solid-state drive, an 8-core M2 standard processor, 10-core GPU, and 8GB of unified memory. Yes, you can upgrade it, but again, the second you do that, you are now pricing yourself into other objectively better machines. And real talk, the first reason to buy the MacBook Air is the price. That's kind of a cop-out because the price feeds into a lot of the other things that we're going to talk about today, but you kind of have to start there as the foundation. You straight up will not get a better computer of this size for the money. That's not a maybe or a, well, if you consider this kind of waffling, where eventually at the end of the video I'm like, well, if you think of all these things, it is the best. There is not another laptop of this size, weight, and build quality on the market for this price. I think that statement alone is worthy of a you should buy video. It's really hard to find uniqueness and really good, useful niche products anymore, but the 15-inch MacBook Air defies a lot of what I've come to expect in the laptop world, especially at its price point. Not only are the individual reasons good enough by themselves, but they are very impressive considering that price at which you get them. So the next reason to buy the MacBook Air is the build quality. No kidding, I was nervous about this coming out of the WWDC announcement earlier this year. When you take materials that are already pretty darn light and stretch them out even farther, I was nervous that we might see bending or warping issues like we saw in some of the initial generations of the super thin iPads. But whatever magic they've figured out has kept this laptop absolutely rigid. I throw it in bags, I throw it in all sorts of places with books and other things that if this were made of weaker material, those objects pressing against it would cause some distortions. But this holds up to whatever I throw it at. The build itself feels incredible for both that lightweight and the price. This laptop feels super premium, and I would go so far as to say the 15-inch MacBook Air feels more impressive than any other MacBook, any other laptop I've ever used. Because normally, a computer of this size is associated with a certain amount of weight in my brain. This computer shatters expectations the second you pick it up. And my brain today still gets surprised every time I move it off of a table or I pick it up to put it in my bag. Seriously, without any joke, you go to the store today and pick one of these up. If this doesn't also shatter your mind, I don't know what else to say. The ports are all well built. I don't have any concerns about warping or breaking around these themselves. The keyboard feels amazing to type on. The trackpad is bigger than most cell phones. This is just built really, really well. Leading into the next reason to buy the MacBook Air, it's dead silent. Do you see anything on here? You don't see any fins or any ports or anything like that, because much like the rest of the Air lineup after the M1 processors were announced, this computer doesn't have a fan. I know, that might be a scary thing for a first-time user moving away from a standard laptop to accept. The main thing a laptop has to do is thermal management. If a laptop doesn't manage that, you might as well literally take your money and throw it away, because the specs you've paid for and the features included on the laptop, you're not getting them. The MacBook Air 13, both the M1 and M2 variants, have never given me cause for concern unless I'm actively going out of my way to break their thermal systems. And the 15-inch is even better in my opinion because its passive cooling system has done the one thing it can do to make it even better is it's bigger. So because it's bigger, it has much more space to soak the heat. This is like the pinnacle of what one of these systems can be, because it has ever so slightly more space to dissipate, and in my normal use, including making videos for this YouTube channel, it's gotten warm, but never hot. What that buys you though is dead silence in use. I don't know about you, but if you haven't used one of these new MacBook Airs, or maybe one of the new MacBook Minis or Mac Studios, you might not appreciate how wonderful it is to not have to listen to laptop or computer fan noise. But on the negative side of the house, once you get used to silence, other computers become real annoying because you will never ever stop hearing it. So just be prepared. If you're going to get one of these, be prepared to be ruined on all other laptops forever. You give this a shot, you're ruining everything, but dang, is it worth that shot? The next reason to buy the MacBook Air is probably its biggest selling point, the display. Yes, essentially it's the same display as in the 13-inch model, but it's bigger. No surprises there, it's a 15-inch MacBook Air. No, the screen is bigger. It's not the high-end version display from the MacBook Pros. It doesn't have an impressively fast refresh rate. It doesn't do HDR better than a cinema screen. It's pretty standard, and I think that's okay because Apple standard is still better than most other displays. The real selling point is that extra screen real estate for work, and yes, it's worth it. As I get older, I find I prefer having bigger screens, just having more space for extra windows, but maybe also sometimes I need to zoom in on text a little more. I'm not saying, my eyesight's getting bad, but sometimes it's just nice to have it. It happens to all of us. It's so much easier to work from the road when you have a 15-inch screen compared to having a 13-inch screen. Maybe you can still get by with a 13-inch, but once you start going bigger displays, it's hard to go back. And it doesn't sound like a lot, and it doesn't look like a lot from this video. I mean, believe me, I'm editing the video. I get that it doesn't look that big in the video, but in use, it's a shockingly big difference, and one that I would gladly pay for. Plus, 500 nits of max brightness is about the perfect sweet spot of just bright enough to function pretty much anywhere without needing to go out of your way to avoid bright lights. I mean, even the high-end MacBook Pro displays also only go up to 500 nits in their standard dynamic range mode. This is real good. Another thing to consider when you look at the usable display to price ratio, the only other computer that really matches the 15-inch MacBook Air for usable power on the road with its screen size is the MacBook Pro 16, which costs far more, and it is way heavier. Sure, it's an amazing computer for what it is, but this Air needs to be considered a lighter Pro 16 and not a slightly less expensive and less feature-rich MacBook Pro 14. Trust me, once you make that leap in your head, this thing gets even more impressive. The battery life is also another great reason to buy this MacBook Air. Right up there with thermal performance. If a laptop has bad battery life and you need it plugged into a desk all day anyway, again, why would you even buy a laptop? Desktops are cheaper and more powerful, so just do that if you don't have a need to be mobile. 18 hours of life is fantastic. Sure, that's under optimal conditions and light workloads, but in my experience, I've never had an issue with life during a flight or throughout a workday. It's absolutely a required metric of mine that any upgrade in tech has to make my life easier, not just faster, and battery life is one of those key considerations. Being able to never worry about if my computer will make it is such a weight off my shoulders. I highly recommend that you also make it a purchasing decider for you. My day job's provided laptop, this thing right here that you see, it can sometimes make it barely through a single meeting without running out of battery, and I hate needing to rely on it for anything. I hate it. The MacBook battery life never even crosses my mind. If I'm in a meeting or working, sometimes it'll get plugged in. That weight off is so good. Seriously, without a doubt, the new 15-inch MacBook Air, especially the cheapest version, is one of the most useful new computers to come out over the past couple of years. I absolutely recommend this over the M2 MacBook Air 13. I recommend it over the MacBook Pros, unless you specifically need that power. This is now one of my standard recommendations, and I, without hesitation, think you should totally buy one. But what about you? Have you tried out this behemoth? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see how this stacks up to the 14-inch MacBook Pro, click here. Thanks for watching.